It started, like most stories of brilliance, in a lab. White coats, fluorescent lights, the faint hum of machines that turned theory into discovery. William Leonard Pickard wasn't your typical criminal. He wasn't violent. He didn't carry a gun. He was a Harvard researcher, a soft-spoken genius who once studied the chemistry of consciousness. But behind the calm, methodical exterior of a scientist, a different kind of experiment was taking shape. In the 1980s, America was obsessed with the war on drugs, a war fought in streets and jungles, not in sterile laboratories. Yet, in the quiet corners of academia, Pickard saw a different battle, one of control, freedom, and curiosity. He wasn't interested in money, not at first. He was interested in altered states, in the chemistry of perception. His fascination led him deep into the molecular world of LSD, one of the most powerful hallucinogens ever created by man. Pickard was a prodigy, brilliant, eccentric, and dangerously persuasive. At Harvard, he'd earned the trust of some of the brightest minds in the country. But his obsession with psychedelics grew darker, more personal. He began studying the methods of Albert Hofmann, the Swiss chemist who first synthesized LSD, and soon, Pickard's research crossed the thin, shimmering line between curiosity and crime. By the early 1990s, Pickard had disappeared from academia. He was living under aliases, drifting from city to city, always near a lab, always experimenting. But these weren't university labs anymore. They were mobile LSD superlabs, hidden in barns, underground bunkers, even inside missile silos. Federal agents began whispering about a ghost in the system, a man capable of producing LSD so pure it could intoxicate millions with just a few grams. He was brilliant, elusive, and completely off the grid. And then, in 2000, the Drug Enforcement Administration finally caught his scent. It began with an abandoned missile silo in Kansas. Inside, agents found what they described as the largest LSD lab in history. Stainless steel vats, distillation columns, chemical precursors worth millions. Enough acid, they claimed, to supply the entire United States and possibly the world. The man behind it all? William Leonard Pickard, the Harvard chemist turned fugitive scientist. When the DEA finally closed in, it wasn't with gunfire or explosions, it was with patience. They watched him for months, following every move. And on November 6, 2000, on a deserted Kansas highway, Pickard's car was stopped. Inside, thousands of vials, lab notebooks, and chemical residues. It was over. Or at least, it looked that way. The arrest became national news. The real Walter White, headlines called him. But unlike the fictional teacher turned meth cook, Pickard's motives were harder to define. He claimed his work wasn't about profit, but enlightenment, that he was distributing LSD as a means of awakening, not addiction. To his followers, he was a visionary chemist. To the DEA, he was one of the most dangerous men alive. During the trial, prosecutors estimated that Pickard had produced 90% of the world's LSD supply in the 1990s, an almost unbelievable claim. Whether true or exaggerated, it made him a legend in both law enforcement and underground circles. The DEA paraded his arrest as a victory in the war on drugs. But beneath the headlines, something strange happened. After Pickard's arrest, LSD availability across the US dropped almost overnight. Festivals went dry. Supply chains vanished. Prices spiked. To many in the psychedelic world, it was proof the Harvard chemist really had been the source. For years, the drug almost disappeared from the streets. Pickard was sentenced to 2 life terms in a maximum security prison. But his story didn't end there. Even behind bars, his legend grew. He wrote essays on consciousness, prison reform, and human rights. His writings were philosophical, haunting, and at times, defiant. He described the inner world of isolation, a scientist trapped in his own chemical creation. The mind, he wrote once, is the final laboratory. And then, in 2020, 2 decades after his arrest, the unthinkable happened. William Leonard Pickard was released. No warning. No press conference. After 20 years in prison, the man known as the LSD kingpin quietly walked free. The reason? Compassionate release. His health had deteriorated. The same government that once called him a threat to civilization now set him free. And with that, the legend of the real-life Walter White returned. Older, frailer, but still surrounded by myth. Since his release, Pickard has spoken cautiously about his past. He denies ever being the architect of global LSD production. But in interviews, he smiles at the question, as if truth and myth have become the same. He talks instead about the future of psychedelics, of medical research, of the thin line between crime and discovery. And maybe that's the part that makes his story unforgettable. Because William Leonard Pickard wasn't just a chemist who built a drug empire. He was a man who blurred the line between genius and madness, who asked the same question science has asked for centuries. How far can we go before we destroy ourselves? Today, his story survives in whispers, told in underground circles, chemistry forums, and conspiracy blogs. The man who might have altered the course of an entire subculture, with molecules he made by hand. The war on drugs was supposed to end stories like his. Instead, it created legends. And somewhere between Harvard's laboratories and Kansas' abandoned silos, William Leonard Pickard became something else entirely, a myth of modern alchemy. A real-life Walter White. A man who proved that brilliance, when untethered from morality, can be just as explosive as the chemicals it creates.